Hello everybody, MaxMonty1516 here, back once again with a brand new review, and we are finally starting out here with the Motorized items released this year for the 80th anniversary. Mattel has launched a brand new CGI styled line after the end of the All Engines Go one, and somehow Flying Scotsman made it into the first wave. So there's a lot to talk about here, and I am really excited to go ahead and get this series started, so let's go ahead and dive right in. The Flying Scotsman is such an interesting character in the Thomas and Friends lore, and that is really just because of how sparse his appearances are, yet he's somewhat of an important character, being Gordon's brother and all. He was in the Railway series once, and then he actually didn't properly appear in the show until the 2016 movie, The Great Race. And he honestly didn't get that much merchandise back then and throughout all of the original CGI era. And now, here we are, all of a sudden, he's got a new Motorized model and a Bachmann model on the way. So, Flying Scotsman's been more relevant than ever recently in the merchandise sphere, at least. And I think it's really cool that he's actually made it in, and there's a new model of him to talk about here. And yeah, there's definitely a lot interesting stuff about this one. So, I'll take a look at his main body first. I don't really feel like I need to talk about the packaging that much because it's been the same for the past, 5 years. So anyway, I'll start with the face. This face kind of sucks, I'm going to be honest. I know most Flying Scotsman merch has this weird, winking, half-winking, determined expression. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't like this. I don't like that one eye is, permanently halfway closed. It just looks weird to me. I can't lie. But, yeah. Also, his face is not perfectly round either. It is an oval shape, and once you notice that, you really can't unnotice it, and that's honestly kind of annoying. Don't love that, but I think it was done to make him not too wide so they could still fit the smoke deflectors on the side, which, are kind of small. They're not, anything too out there. They don't really cover his face or front of the smoke box either. They're just kind of there on the side. And I know they do move in CGI for some reason, but still, I don't know. Would have been nicer if they came out just a little bit more, if they were a little bit bigger. And then also, his funnel is really long for some reason. It should be round. I don't know why it's an oval. I got nothing. This is just really weird to me. That's probably one of my biggest flaws with the model right there. I hate how long his funnel is. That's just super weird. But yeah, also other details on the front here. He does have a black running board, at least sort of. It doesn't go all the way back to the splashers, but it's here at least in the front part. His smokebox frames are there as well. They're 3D, and he's also got painted buffers on the front, which is really nice to see. And then, moving on to the side, there's a lot of detail here, and I gotta say I commend them for this a lot. He's got his nameplate right there in the middle splasher. I also want to commend the fact that his wheels and splashers actually line up, and that's good, but he does look really tall on the chassis, and the wheels don't even come up to the running board like they should. So I don't know what the thought process here was either. I mean, I feel like they could have just, made him a bit shorter on the chassis. I mean, he looks like he's too tall, basically, and you'll see that more when I do a comparison with the original model. But still, it is nice that the splashers line up, but it would have been nicer if they were a bit closer so you could actually see them in action. He's got lining on his splashers. He's also got the stripes on his boiler there, and the dome as well, which is the proper shape. The lining on mine is a little bit messed up. The printing isn't great on these sometimes because they're done in sections now. And, there's the top section and then both on the sides. And sometimes they just do not get it perfectly, which I get is a flaw of the machine itself and not just this model. But still a little annoying. He also has some rivets down here on the bottom of his cab. He's also got his number there, 4472, as well as his handrails, which are actually molded on. They're not just painted. You can actually feel those. And he's got more rivets up there at the top where his cab roof is. His windows are 3D as well. They're not just painted on. I like that. That's a good detail. And of course, we have the switch up here. He's motorized, and he moves. And speaking of the wheels, once again, he's got the new side rod molding there. Looks nice, honestly. I can't complain here. I like the extra detail added in the middle, and the square ends versus the old round ones look a lot nicer. He's also got his cylinders and his valve gear here. They don't connect or anything. They're just there for detail's sake. And honestly, this is a really nice addition in my opinion. I wish more toys did this, just in general, and had this level of detail. And also, I wish the lines on his cylinders there were painted. I don't know why they're not. I don't know. A little bit annoying, but, you know, again, it's a pretty small detail. And then also, this is something a lot of people have pointed out, but basically, Scotsman's got these two lines here, and one of them's black, one of them's silver. The silver one is supposed to be on top. That is the handrail, I think, and the steam pipe is the black one, and I believe that should be down here. So they did mix up the two lines on his boiler there. Not the end of the world to me. I would not have noticed this if my friend didn't point it out. So I'm not going to dock them too much for that. But again, you know, they have the reference material. They could fix that. But still, you know, not the end of the world. Most of the nitpicks here I've mentioned really are not big deals at all. And also, I forgot to point out that he's actually got smaller wheels both in the front and the back there. These are separate pieces that are just screwed onto the bottom of the chassis. And I believe the back wheels here are also coupling holders. So he's got a really long coupling for some reason. So when you couple that up to a tender, that space is really awkward. And speaking of tenders, here they are. I won't dwell on these for too long, but just a quick look at them. This is his coal tender with a little water tank back there. The coal texture looks nice. I like that a lot. It's also got a matte finish on it, which is pretty neat. Then he has the LNER lettering here, as well as his stripes that go around the tender. And the tender lining is really nice. I like that it's the triple with the black surrounded by white. More handrails here on the front and rivets near the bottom. He's got his corridor on the back there, nothing on the front, which there doesn't really need to be. And then here we have the water tender, which is also missing its corridor on the front. It should have a corridor there, but it does have the back one. So you win some, you lose some, I guess. Then we also have the water cap up here, as well as just the top of the tender. I don't really know what to call these lines or anything, but they're just kind of there. This is the tender specifically for water, so it just looks like a tank mainly, so yeah. And then also to mention the new chassis on the bottom of these look really nice. I like how detailed the brake housings are. And even if they are just four-wheeled, you can at least kind of pretend that there's more wheels because there is another brake housing there in the middle. So, you know, that looks pretty nice. Obviously, I wouldn't expect these to have more than four wheels, especially because they need to be long enough to fit in the box properly. And rolling stock and tenders have been this size for 11 years now, and that's not changing anytime soon. But, yeah, they do not have painted buffer beams, which, I mean, honestly kind of makes sense for this one, because there really shouldn't be buffers here. But I get why they haven't done that, just because they've been reusing this chassis, and they're not going to make a special one without buffers just for the front piece. Though I do kind of wish we had some painted buffer beams on the back there and on the front of this one, because that would have been accurate. But, again, honestly, just a small nitpick. These, in general, though, look pretty nice. And I do like that they're actually separate pieces for the black tops now versus just everything being painted on. And now to bring in the major comparison, here is the 2025 Scotsman model versus the 2016 Scotsman model. And right off the bat, you're going to see a lot of changes here. And honestly, I feel like the 2025 one is the clear winner in pretty much every category. They have shockingly similar faces, first of all, though I do believe this was just the face used on the reference material, and I don't think the reference material changed much between these two models, to be quite honest. But yeah, just such interesting changes here. Obviously, the color is a major one. This is way more accurate to the Scotsman model we see in the show, though I do think this one might be more accurate to real life, or at least the livery it wore at one point with the apple green. I'm not sure how accurate this like sort of malachite minty green looks in terms of real life. I don't know if the Scotsman ever wore that, but yeah, it does look more accurate to the show at least, so I'll take that. Then we also here have the steam clouds on the side of the 2016 one, and that was probably the biggest point of contention for this model, and also the reason I really don't like it that much. The steam clouds look terrible. I cannot believe this was even approved. I know it's meant to symbolize him going fast or whatever because he's a really fast engine, but like, it just honestly really ruins the model for me because now you can't have just a normal looking Scotsman. He's got to have the steam on him. It looks really bad. And yeah. So also another thing to point out here, both the handrail and the steam pipe are molded on but not painted. And same with the handrails, at least this one, but this one is painted for some reason, so weird inconsistency there. The cab windows are like a grayish versus black on the new one. And also the dome and funnel are much bigger, though this one does have a round funnel, like he should. This one doesn't for some reason, though there is a hole in the funnel now versus it just being filled in. And also, I don't really know what this small piece is here behind the funnel. I've never noticed that before, actually, and it's not on the new one, so I don't really know where that came from. Also, Scotsman has lamp irons down here on his running board there, and they are gone on the new one. Weird change. I don't know why they've done that, but still. Also, he has round buffers, and this one has the oval buffers like Gordon does. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really know which one is accurate. I haven't looked at Scotsman himself in a while. I'm pretty sure the round ones are correct, but I could be wrong there. I think Scotsman has round buffers. I would need to double check that. But he does have the oval buffers here. And then moving on to the back, there's not much to say. I painted this piece when I was much younger. Normally it wouldn't look like that, but you know, there's not going to be back printing. It's Mattel. They never do that. And then obviously here, just continuing on, a lot of differences, like I mentioned. The splashers are a bit taller on the new one, and the numbering is bigger, mainly because the cab is bigger. But yeah, a lot of changes done here. He now has the red on the side of his running board. That is a nice touch, I will say. And this one weirdly has like the dark green. I don't know if you can really see that well on camera, but the running board piece is molded in a really dark, almost black, but not quite green. You can tell it's green, at least in person. But they have rectified this. Now it's molded in red with the black painted running board. So yeah, big differences here. And now we will quickly look at the tenders. Honestly, the tenders really have not changed that much, so I'll go through these pretty quickly. But of course, judging by the coal tenders, first of all, the steam trend continues and it still looks terrible, so I'm really glad that's been ditched. The lining is much more accurate, as you can see. Again, there's just the black stripe there versus now it's surrounded in the white. And also, the 2016 Scotsman has the wrong corners because these are curved in, and they should just be squares. They should just be like right angles, like that. So hopefully you can see the difference there. Big improvement on the new one. And then also, the coal piece is now separate, put together, versus this just being painted on. It's all one piece. And then looking at the back, again, I've painted this when I was much younger. Just ignore that. But the corridors are more detailed. We have a lamp here on the back of the tender, and there are some rivets back here as well, which are gone on the new one. And also, they have flat buffers, again, which I have painted. But yeah, they do have the red paint here for the running board, or not running board, sorry, buffer beam. But yeah, and then the chassis are different as well, like I mentioned. The brake housings just kind of cover up half the wheels on this one, whereas this is much more accurate with the triangular pieces. And then with the water tenders, again, pretty much the same differences. This looks way better as a separate piece, I gotta say, for the top, and this one just looks way more flat and unappealing. Though, again, there's a look at the corridor tender, or the corridor on the rear, without the paint on it, and it looks a lot better this way, obviously. So, again, lamp there, extra detailing, couple rivets. It just looks nicer, and I kind of wish this new one had that level of detail on the back. And again, with the painted buffer beams, they look nice. I really wish the new one had that. But that is pretty much it for the comparisons and generally the review as well. I forgot to mention that they have now changed the coupling system, sort of, because now they used to have a separate piece, and now it's just molded into the buffer beam there. But I'll go ahead and remove these and get a final word in. Scotsman is overall a cool model, I gotta say. There are some weird inconsistencies and just general nitpicks I have with this. And of course, how could I forget to mention the height difference between him and his tender. That is not great, in my opinion. So, like I said, there are a lot of flaws with this model, and Scotsman is very divisive in the community, I gotta say. A lot of people love him, a lot of people hate him. I kind of fall in the middle, to be honest. I would probably give him maybe a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6. But he's got some really weird decisions, like with the steam pipe and the handrail being mixed up, his face not being a perfect circle, his funnel being way too long, and also the coupling being way too long. Like, look at that difference. Why did they do that? And also just the tenders remaining the same height as the previous, but then they've made the engine itself way, way larger. So, yeah, still a lot of issues, but there's still a lot of cool stuff. And even seeing Flying Scotsman have a toy in the modern day, in the year of our Lord 2025, is insane. So, yeah, Scotsman seems to be selling well, regardless of the flaws. And I just think it'd be nice for kids to get a character they probably didn't have before, because that old model is turning 10 years old and it's being scalped for crazy prices online nowadays. So being in the current year and having the opportunity to go buy a Scotsman in the stores is honestly pretty remarkable. So again, thank you, Mattel, for at least making Scotsman and trying. Didn't get everything quite right with this model, but that's not the end of the world, really. He's all right for the most part. I'll quit rambling now. I forgot to film a transition scene for this, but I filmed a little running session for Scotsman and the others on this new layout, so let's go ahead and see that.